Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. I am All in Crypto, and today we're going to be delivering another daily cryptocurrency market update. As always, we have a lot to get into, but we are going to keep this video short and sweet. We often get towards the sort of 20-minute mark. We'll try and keep it to the sort of 10, 11, 12-minute mark if we can. But we're going to start things off by talking about some of the events happening today in regards to company earnings, looking at tomorrow in regards to the Fed rate decision. We're going to be talking about the Bitcoin halvening, which is 275 or 74 days away. Then we're going to be talking a little bit about macro. We're going to be mentioning Worldcoin. What is Worldcoin? Should you be for it or against it? We are going to be exploring that. And then we'll talk about regulations as we see the SEC postured to appeal Ripple's secondary market ruling. Of course, they would be. But I just want to talk about the environment that we're in. Of course, we'll look at the Bitcoin chart and explain this in a little bit more detail. Technically, we're having a bit of a lackluster time period, certainly for the price action of Bitcoin and a lot of the crypto space. Some coins are doing very well. We're seeing XDC, which is a kind of what we would call an institutional coin, doing very well. And though that sector has actually shown a lot of strength in relation to, your sort of ISO standard cryptocurrencies have shown a lot of strength in relation to a lot of your perhaps legacy cryptos, non-establishment cryptos, if you can call them that. And we will be making a video on that and saying, look, should you be positioned in this area over this area? And we'll be sort of looking at the ins and outs of that. But we're having a lackluster time period for the cryptocurrency space. We've essentially been ranging for the past 30 days plus. And we had a sell-off yesterday that was, all my viewers would have been largely expecting that. This is something that we've been reiterating, that actually when you're in a flag structure, when you're in a range structure, it's very common that that structure will end on a final sort of deviation to the downside or a stab to the downside. And that's exactly what you've seen. We've seen this happen on the three pullbacks that we've seen thus far from Bitcoin from 15K, which we were very accurate at calling on. And Bitcoin is still 80+% up today. So I saw a lot of people talking about a crash yesterday. Certainly wasn't a crash in my books. And people often forget, certainly if they're in both the stock world and the crypto world, which is what we try and do, the kind of macro world and the crypto world, or the risk world and the crypto world, they often forget just how volatile crypto can be. And this is just another day in the crypto space. And we've likened that final stab down to needing to take a few steps back to be able to sort of clear the hurdle that's in front of you. You don't want to jump typically static from it. You want to get that run up. And that's kind of what we think is playing out. But I want to start things off really with the week ahead, okay? So we've really covered, and we're one of the only channels, literally one of the only channels, to highlight the correlation between small altcoins like Snapchat, for example, and altcoins. Small stocks like Snapchat and altcoins. They're in the same position. And actually, your larger cap stocks are leading, Bitcoin's leading the altcoins, and these are very much positioned for upside. We're looking at many of these as stage 2 breakouts or potential stage 2 breakouts. And the altcoin market generally and the small cap stock market is typically in a stage 1, moving into a stage 2, which is your sort of bull market impulse, which lines up with a lot of other things that we've spoken about on the channel. But you've got a lot of company earnings coming out today. Some notable ones are Spotify, Google, Microsoft, Snapchat, and Visa. Of course, we have been monitoring all these, and we will look at it when we go over to take a look at Bitcoin on a smaller time frame. And then, of course, tomorrow you pretty much have a given that the Fed are going to do a 25 basis point rate hike. Not sure what the Fed's doing. I think they're doing this because of central bank wars. I don't think they're doing it necessarily to kill inflation. We do have a video coming up on inflation. We've been looking at a lot of commodity stocks that could have found a local bottom here. And actually, you are seeing in certain niche areas, I think butter was one. I think orange juice was one, believe it or not. An inflation in the inflation of them after a real deflationary period. So this is something to watch because this is a main macro driver, the sort of inflationary narratives, why the Fed has upped interest rates. This is what Jerome Powell has started his speeches on and other central bankers. So this is something really important to watch. But tomorrow, you're basically set to get another 25 basis point interest rate hike. Got lots of company earnings also coming out tomorrow. We've said that it's going to be a volatile week, and you're seeing that. And I think you're seeing, certainly in regards to the crypto space, which has got hit harder than the stock market, which had a decent day yesterday. Futures market's looking like it's going to open up well. Gold's doing well. The dollar's at a very key level. The cryptocurrency market is being the smaller market. There's volatility and hedging involved. Let's move on to the Bitcoin halvening. So my expectations tomorrow are they do a 25 basis points. it's pretty much a given at this point. I don't think I've seen a 98% or 99 basically percent probability based on the FedWatch CME group tool before. So they've obviously signaled this quite well to the market, and insiders are very savvy. If they didn't, markets would love it. If they do, I still think markets may do well on that, and certainly we'll see what they have to say afterwards. You had lots of PMIs coming out yesterday that all showed deflation really across the board. A lot of them were overshoots in terms to downside, which was extremely interesting. You are now 275 days away from the next Bitcoin halving. And it's very interesting to me that Bitcoin is essentially just following the 4-year cycle theory. So going back to the Brave New Liquid Coin Index, which, by the way, for anybody that wants to look at a long chart for Bitcoin, I think this is the best one. This is a monthly. You know, are we going to see similar price action going into it? Well, we've already seen similar price action thus far. We are very much following this cycle theory extremely accurately, and you can actually see, you know, even where we were in previous cycles. And actually, one thing that we typically get is the majority of the bull market starts after the halving. Now, I think there's going to be a bit of an acceleration of this. Will we continue to follow the Bitcoin halving cycle? Undoubtedly, there's going to be an element of Bitcoin supply halving that will play out in the price. But I think as it becomes more and more of a global asset, we'll kind of move away from it. That's always been my thought. However, we are following it very, very accurately recently, despite all the macro drivers. And I think that there's still a lot of people out there that are expecting a crash. I do think a crash comes. I just don't think it's. I think it's a while away. In fact, it could be 2 years away. It could be 12 months away. It could be 16 months away. We'll have to watch the yield curve for that. But this is very interesting. You know, you can see that typically, if you look at the previous 274 days away, the price action does quite well, which kind of also lines it. It's another kind of compounder into where we're at. And I feel like retail sentiment at the moment is pretty low. It's pretty fatigued. You know, I certainly notice fatigue myself at times with the crypto space, certainly when you have lackluster sort of news days and kind of price action to accompany it. If you look at interest in crypto, it's very low. All of this will come back, and it will come back with a vengeance. And actually, right now, you are seeing your major institutions gain Bitcoin exposure through miners, through MicroStrategy. We looked at the largest holders of MicroStrategy, BlackRock, and so on. And I think that that's very telling. And almost, you know, their interest is high in this stuff when retail isn't. And that's typically how it goes, which is why we try and do these videos daily to keep everybody on the kind of right side of things. So this is very interesting. Let's pivot over to Bitcoin now. You guys know the plans that we've set forth for Bitcoin. And ultimately, we do think that they follow them pretty well. You know, we were one of the only channels on, in January, certainly the start of January, even going into January, that we're actually looking at getting back in the market. And certainly the call we made was an amazing one. And you've done a very similar thing here to what you did here and actually here. Again, when you're in a kind of range, often you need to get the run up. If you imagine this kind of range up here as the hurdle, you need that run up to take it. And Bitcoin is still 75% up. People get spoiled and they expect 100% returns in no time because of the altcoin market and things like this. But actually, that's a fantastic return for the year so far. And I think that this is very normal. I think this could go on for a little bit longer. Potentially with all the catalysts that we've got going on this week, you could see a real uptick in it. It's very interesting that you've got the likes of Snapchat, which we looked at as a potential stage 2 breakout. You know, has this broken out? Is this the retest? And then you see that continuation. That would be very interesting. Very interesting to me that stocks are in the same place as altcoins. But bringing it back to Bitcoin, and maybe we'll look at the total tip before we move on. You know, it still looks very healthy, the Bitcoin chart. This is your next area up here, and we've got technical patterns that suggest it. It has been somewhat lackluster in opposition with the NASDAQ, perhaps, or the stock market. However, historically, we know that the stock market, certainly looking at the NASDAQ and using an example, leads Bitcoin. And this is very healthy, very in line. And we did quite a bit of looking at sort of macro context yesterday. We're not worried at all about the price. This is setting up for the next up leg, and take advantage of that, ladies and gentlemen. If you're bearish, then you don't need to. You've got to make your own decisions up. But we've laid forwards and set forwards a number of reasons. You know, this is the total market cap, which I don't think looks too bad. Again, you're ready to get to that stage 2, which is your breakout stage now, in my opinion. You're doing a similar thing to what you did over here, actually. You're going to potentially break it, retest it, and then you're off to the races. And you want to be loaded up for that, in my opinion. If you want to find out what I'm buying, where I'm buying, do consider joining the Patreon. So, moving on now. Chinese stocks pop as Beijing vows more measures to boost weak economy. So there's lots of talk about liquidity coming from China, which is a big liquidity source. You know, if you look at central banks, this plays out, even though it's over in China, in the UK, US, and global stock markets. And again, just like with other central banks, you know, you can see actually, this is the S&P, you can see China started to up liquidity. The stock market very much followed it. And actually, there's a correlation here. You want to look for correlations between markets. Something that makes this channel special from the rest is we can correlate the kind of macro, boring economic stuff with our markets. You know, we know the correlation, of course, with Bitcoin. You know, you can see as you've had this uptick for central banks, if we go ahead and look at the Fed's balance sheet in terms of liabilities and cash, you know, we've looked at all this, and this is something to watch and front run. Little bit of macro stuff. Moving on to Worldcoin. Had a lot of people asking me about this. I'm going to do a separate video of it. Worldcoin is essentially a coin that provides an identity based on your iris as a fingerprint. You go and you have your iris scanned by this orb. It's very sort of Black Mirror-y or George Orwellian-y. And essentially, it will give you a fingerprint or an iris scan that will be able to... you'll get airdrop the Worldcoin, and you'll have an identity that's based on your iris that you can use to verify yourself with. This is what the future looks like. This is something that we've said, actually, crypto is amazing. It does a lot of revolutionary things, and in terms of decentralization, in terms of liberating certain areas. However, it also brings with it a lot of surveillance, and this is part of it. You know, this is going to be governmental eventually. You know, this is also to pilot UBI, Universal Basic Income, which sounds great. People go, oh, you know, why wouldn't we want to get money given to us for free? Well, the ramifications of that are, in my opinion, going to lead to the complete demise of an already demising in the Western world society. The West we've got this kind of notion that we're like a developed world. Well, actually, we have significantly more problems than most of the quote unquote undeveloped world, the emerging nations, socially, especially. If you look at rates of things like suicide and social issues and all this kind of stuff, the West is just doing the worst job of them all. And actually, UBI would be an accelerant of that. You know, if you look at my granddad's generation, they didn't moan. You know, they really didn't. They were hard workers. The work ethic was there. They were proud to be hard workers. They had better morals, arguably, than people today, and you know, understood who they were, and so on and so forth. Nowadays, that's just a complete mess, and it's a real shame to see. And you know, UBI accelerates all that. And one reason they didn't moan back then was because it wasn't a thing. You know, you got on with it, and you didn't really have time to think about it because you were busy. You know, you had kids, so on and so forth. If you give people the time to sit and think and do nothing, I think you create a whole range of problems. And this is pretty scary, but it's coming. We'll do a whole video on this in more depth, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to try and wrap this video up as we did promise to try and keep it short and sweet. We've gone on to the 15-minute mark. Just a lot to talk about, as always, even in the lackluster days. The SEC posted to appeal Ripple's secondary market ruling. Of course they are. Gary Gensler is zealous about what he's doing. He's wrong about what he's doing. Again, they're going to the courts to power grab and land grab. But regulations is far from solved just with this one win. It's going to be a long process that could take 2 years or so. But I do think it's the very thing that propels crypto into the big leagues and the mainstream. And ultimately, I do think crypto will come out victorious and have a clear roadmap in regards to the direction that it's heading. So that's really all I've got for you guys. Remember, there's a lot going on today. Bitcoin, crypto, we're not really that worried in regards to the price action. I think people that were calling this a crash haven't really accounted for where we've came from. We had the same thing here. Every single sell-off that there's been, we've been greeted with criticism. And we've shrugged it off. And here we are. And we got the same thing here. And even though this is a significantly smaller sell-off than this, a lot of bears claiming victory. This isn't about bears and bulls. This is about making money at the end of the day, guys. You can be as bearish as you want. You can be as bullish as you want. If you don't make any money, it doesn't mean a damn thing in the markets. I'm not interested in necessarily being right on my calls. I'm interested in making money. I'm interested in bringing the community that I have with me and making sure that we all make money and prosper together. And that includes you guys as well. You know, we appreciate everybody's comments and we love more of them in the comment section. So if you've enjoyed the content, like is appreciated. So as a comment. On that note, guys, I'm going to love and leave you. I will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful Tuesday.